The studio was electric moments before it fractured. Bright lights glared down on a stage that had seen countless stars, but none quite like him. Clint Eastwood, silver-haired and steel-eyed, stormed off set under the blistering heat of cameras that refused to look away. The crowd didn't know whether to clap or gasp. Phones shot up, screens blinked red, and the world began recording history, or what looked like the unraveling of a legend. Jimmy Kimmel stood frozen, clutching cue cards that now felt like broken shields. His smirk faltered, caught between embarrassment and disbelief. Well, that was unexpected. He chuckled weakly, but no one laughed. The applause sign flickered overhead like a dying light bulb. On live television, a man walked away from the game and dared the world to follow. Within minutes, news feeds exploded. Clint Eastwood explodes on set. Live meltdown or moral stand. Has Hollywood finally gone too far? But behind the headlines and hashtags was a deeper current. One the world couldn't tweet away. This wasn't just a spat between an aging icon and a ratings-hungry host. It was a collision of history, guilt, and silence too long maintained. What the cameras didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the storm that had been brewing inside Clint for decades. A smooth, haunting narration cut through the media static. America saw a man break, but what they didn't see was the burden he carried. This wasn't about showbiz, it was about betrayal. About a memory so heavy it bent the spine of a legend, and about how one live broadcast became the stage for a reckoning no one expected. And, as Clint pushed open the exit door into the Los Angeles night, something cracked, not in his voice but in the air around him. Something long buried was finally crawling toward the light. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It lets us know you want more real, raw narratives. Outside the studio, the cool night did little to calm the storm brewing within Clint. His jaw clenched as he slipped into the waiting black sedan, Maggie close behind, her eyes scanning the lot like she expected cameras to lunge from the shadows. She slid in next to him, silence lingering between them like fog. He didn't speak. He rarely did when the past stirred. Maggie had been with Clint for decades. She knew every scar, every silence, every haunted look that lingered in his eyes. A moment too long. He wasn't just her boss. He was a man carrying the weight of a secret that had calcified into shame. The movie he was promoting wasn't just another project. It was a confession dressed in fiction. A rancher losing his land to greed, fighting ghosts of his past. It was Clint's life veiled behind script pages and dusty landscapes. He's pushing, Clint, Maggie said softly, her voice a blend of concern and fury. He's digging, where he shouldn't. Clint didn't turn to her. Let him dig, just don't let him strike oil. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel sat in his office with a smirk carved across his face. The incident had rattled him, sure, but it also tasted like gold. Viral gold. The producers buzzed around him, high on the electricity of a spectacle, already drafting hashtags and headlines. Jimmy had his own plans. He always did. He'd been tipped off a week earlier. A bar in Texas, a fight that ended with a man dead, and questions buried beneath years of silence. There were whispers Clint had been there. Maybe more than just there. Back in the green room hours before the show, Maggie had tried. She leaned in close to one of the young producers, her voice sharp but measured. Don't turn him into a meme. He's here because this matters to him. You push too far, and he'll snap. They smiled politely, nodded like interns at a funeral, but their eyes gleamed with hunger. They didn't see the man. They saw the moment ripe for manipulation. And Jimmy? He'd already made his choice. He wanted fire, and he didn't care who burned. Clint stepped into the spotlight like a man walking into a courtroom, his posture straight, his face unreadable, but his eyes scanning for threats rather than applause. The roar of the audience washed over him, meaningless noise to a man who'd spent his life learning to tune out anything that didn't matter. Jimmy's voice greeted him with practiced enthusiasm, but Clint didn't smile. He nodded once, sat, and stared ahead like he was preparing for war. Jimmy opened with safe questions about the film, the production, the incredible cinematography. Clint answered with brevity, every sentence carved from stone. He spoke of land, loss, and legacy with a quiet gravity that pulled the room closer, but Jimmy's eyes were elsewhere, watching Clint, measuring his responses, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then came the pivot. So, Jimmy said, leaning forward with a sly grin, do you still ride horses? Or are the ranch scenes all CGI these days? The crowd laughed. Clint didn't. His lips twitched, but it wasn't amusement. It was the flicker before a storm. Only when the horse deserves it, he said flatly, his voice dragging gravel. Jimmy laughed harder, nudging, the moment toward levity. Then too casually he added, reminds me of that old story from the 80s, something about a bar in Austin and a broken nose. Ring a bell? The word struck like a whip. Clint's hand, resting calmly on his knee, curled into a slow fist. Across the stage, Maggie's breath caught. That story wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Jimmy kept talking, letting the innuendo breathe. Just a harmless tale, right? Hollywood scuffle. Happens to the best of us. Then the cowboy hat appeared. A stagehand, following a cue, handed it to Jimmy. He twirled it once and held it up to Clint, eyes gleaming. Come on, give him a show. One shot for the fans. Clint didn't move. For a long moment, he simply stared at the hat, like it was a ghost rising from the floor. His voice when it came was low but lethal. Put that away. The audience laughed, assuming a punchline. But Maggie knew that tone. Ice over lava. She looked to the producer's booth, furious. Jimmy, misreading the silence as hesitance, pressed on. And Clint? His armor cracked. Not visibly, not loudly. But something inside him shifted. Something old and dangerous. The hat lingered in Jimmy's hand like bait. Clint's eyes didn't flinch, but something behind them darkened. Something ancient, unresolved, and too raw to hide. The audience, caught in the artificial rhythm of late-night laughter, chuckled, uncertainly, sensing the shift but not understanding its depth. Jimmy leaned in again, his voice low and theatrical, coaxing the flame he didn't realize was ready to burn. You know, he said, tilting his head, there's this story I heard. From way back. A little bar in Austin. A busted nose. A broken jaw. It's a good one. I think the fans would love to hear it. Clint didn't blink. His silence wasn't cold. It was calculating, like a man weighing whether the truth was worth the wreckage. Then slowly, deliberately, he rose from the chair. The air snapped taut. The applause died. His voice didn't tremble. It didn't rise. But it hit like thunder. You're not talking about Eddie, are you? Gasps scattered through the studio like shrapnel. Even Jimmy faltered. His confident smirk warping into something more defensive. I think the world deserves to know who their heroes really are, Jimmy replied, forcing casualness into a voice that now carried the scent of fear. Clint took a step forward. No rage in his movement, just weight. Every inch he moved carried decades. You want a show? He asked. Tone stripped of performance. I'll give you one. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I watched my best friend die because we were drunk. Because we thought we were invincible. He took a bottle to the temple from a man I could have stopped. But I froze, and when he dropped, I didn't kneel beside him. I ran. The studio hushed like a church at confession. I didn't speak up. Not when the papers lied. Not when the family begged for answers. I hid behind silence and scripts and cameras. I built a career on control, but I've lived with that night every single day. And you, he gestured toward Jimmy, dug up that grave for views. You think that makes you clever? Someone in the front row sobbed. Phones, once poised for entertainment, now recorded something far heavier. Jimmy tried to recover. All right, folks, we're going to take a... But Clint kept moving. His boots thudded against the floor, a rhythm of reckoning. Security edged forward, uncertain. Maggie stepped into their path, her voice low, sharp. Don't touch him. They stopped. The weight of legacy, of guilt, of truth, held them at bay. Clint stopped just before the curtain, turning only once to face the crowd. Don't worship silence, he said. It doesn't protect you, it rots you from the inside out. And then he was gone, disappearing behind the curtain, but not from the conversation. Across the world, the internet detonated. The clip went viral before the next commercial break. Even aired. But Clint didn't care. He hadn't come for applause, he came to bury the lie. By morning, the headlines read like obituaries for innocence. A legend unmasked. Eastwood's on-air confession shocks nation, and when truth hijacked primetime. News anchors dissected the footage frame by frame. Pundits debated. The ethics and social media exploded into battlegrounds of opinion. Jimmy Kimmel's name trended alongside Clint's, but for all the wrong reasons. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire, each replay etching Clint's words deeper into the public's conscience. Within 48 hours, old police reports resurfaced. The case file on Eddie's death, once tucked away in a forgotten drawer, was now digitalized, analyzed, and scrutinized. Though no charges were ever filed, the resurfaced documents painted a clearer picture, one where Clint had never been a suspect, but always a question mark. Now, the silence had been broken, not in court but on camera. A week later, Clint stood before a sea of reporters. No entourage, no podium. Just him and Maggie at his side, her hand lightly resting on his arm. His eyes, worn but unwavering, met the lenses head-on. "I won't ask for forgiveness," he said, "but I will not lie anymore. I failed a friend, and I let the world believe I had nothing to say about it. That ends today." Maggie took the mic for a moment, her voice steady. "He's carried this alone for too long. What you saw wasn't a meltdown. It was a man choosing truth over legacy." Clint retired quietly after that. No farewell tour, no awards gala, but the film he had poured himself into found a second life. Audiences, now seeing it not just as a story, but a confession, flocked to it. Critics called it his most intimate and haunting work. As for Jimmy, his apology aired 2 nights later. It was scripted, polite, and instantly dissected. Some forgave, others turned the channel. The laughs didn't come as easily anymore. In the final reckoning, Clint Eastwood didn't just exit a studio, he walked out of a long-held deception. His silence had been his penance, but when the moment demanded courage, he chose exposure over image. Redemption didn't arrive in applause or absolution. It came in the quiet act of truth-telling, a truth that had waited decades beneath his skin. Sometimes justice isn't written in court transcripts. It's carved in the raw honesty of a single moment. On a wind-cut trail outside his private ranch, Clint walked alone, the weight of years shedding with each step. Behind him, headlines dissolved into dust. In a quiet corner of his study, Maggie placed a worn photograph. Clint and Eddie, arms slung over shoulders, mid-laugh, onto a sunlit shelf. The narrator's voice, soft but certain, echoed the sentiment. Truth doesn't always heal clean. Sometimes it shatters before it settles, but even broken glass catches light. And maybe that's enough. End of script. Let me know if you'd like a full compilation of all parts in a single document or an adaptation for a different format. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next gripping case or untold truth. And drop a comment below. Do you think Clint was right to speak out, or did he go too far? We want to hear your take.